Welcome to another episode of A Day with Dre. It's Friday, November 8th. So you know what we're talking about, the election. But before we get into that, make sure you like, subscribe to the podcast, give a follow on YouTube, Instagram, even TikTok now. That's right, I'm expanding to everything. And we'll try to do this more often, talk about some more things. It's election season, so of course we got to talk about politics. But yeah, again, like, subscribe, A Day with Dre podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. You can find me. All right, so let's talk about the election. And boy, did we have an election. And the winners were the Conservative Party, the GOP. And they won big. They won everything. They won the Senate. They won, obviously, the Oval Office. They're winning in the House. I don't think it's official yet, but I think they will have a majority in the House. And they have over half the governors. So just a complete ass kicking by the GOP. And you know what? They had been working at this for a long time, and it finally worked. They took control of everything. And it was happening in plain sight. But a weak Democratic Party let it happen. So let's talk about why it happened. Let's talk about the leadership of the Democratic Party. Because it's a failure on leadership's end, and it's a failure on the actual voters of the Democratic Party or the left supporters. But let's first talk about the leadership. So, what did the Democratic Party run on? Not being Donald Trump? You would have thought that they learned from, honestly, 2016 or even 2020 that just not being Donald Trump isn't enough. 2016, Hillary lost. Won the popular vote, but lost. So his path to being president was obviously possible. In 2020, yeah, Joe Biden beat him, but it took Joe Biden getting the most votes a president has ever gotten in history to beat him. So obviously that man, Donald, is a force. And, you know, no matter how many allegations, no matter what you throw at him, it just doesn't knock him back. 3-time nominated GOP candidate. Won 2 of them. The man's a force. Obviously, we know that I don't really care for him as a politician, but it's no denying that he's a force. Force of what? I don't know. I'll let you decide which you want to fill in there, but the man's a force. We got to stop thinking that this is a world where his personal shortcomings, sexual assault, history of racism, whatever, not delivering on promise, etc. We got to stop thinking that this is a world where people that support him will care about those things. Because people support politicians that don't deliver all the time. So why would it be any different than him? People support politicians that are shady characters. Why would it change with him? So, I don't know. Just simply thinking that opposition to Trump was enough obviously showed that you weren't paying attention. Because his influence is spreading. More and more politicians are turning into him. More and more voters are turning into him. He is a reflection of the United States. Whether you want to believe it or not, he's a reflection of a huge portion of the United States. So what are you going to do to fight back against that? Because just saying not him isn't going to win. And it's proven that. 2 out of 3 times you lost. And the one victory was a fluke. Let's be honest, it was a fluke. So it's time to be better. All right. And this whole thing about blaming it strictly on misogyny and racism is so lazy. Because in quite a few of the states that Kamala lost, people that would have voted for her voted for a different woman. Now, you can argue about it being a wasted vote. There's really no such thing as a wasted vote because it got counted. Just because a person doesn't win doesn't mean it was a wasted vote. Otherwise, every single vote for Harris is a wasted vote, if that's your logic. But a lot of those votes went to a different woman. So stop blaming it on misogyny. Maybe the candidate and campaign just wasn't something people believed in. And you got to stop saying that a vote for Jill was a vote for Trump. No, it was a vote for Jill. Like, whether you believe in a third party person or not doesn't mean that other people can't. If you had a better campaign, people wouldn't have felt the need to go to a third party. It's like Bernie Sanders all over again. People saying Bernie Sanders cost Hillary the election. No, bad policy cost Hillary the election. Maybe if she would have adopted what people that supported Bernie believed in, then she would have won the election. But instead, people just voted for someone they believed in more. So I'm tired of hearing the whole, this person cost them the election. No, the Democrats cost the Democrats an election. Trump actually got less support than he got last time and still won by a mile. Again, just dominated. Every battleground state, every swing state, he won. Even every state that Harris won in, Trump has become more popular in those states. So the Democrats got to look in the mirror and figure out, what are they doing? Why are they losing people? I tell you what, people want left policy, and moving to the right, getting Liz Cheney, trying to get Republicans to come over versus expanding your left base is probably not how you're going to win elections if you're supposed to be the party on the left. And also, I think it's funny that you move right to try to appease people that are more moderate and conservative, to flip them from being Republican, and they just basically gave you the middle finger and said, we're not changing, we're not flipping, we're going to stay on our side over here. But you get so caught up in Twitter accounts called Republicans Against Trump and Mitt Romney, who is apparently not very influential anymore. If you would have paid attention to the actual world versus the media and maybe the circle in Washington, you would have saw that. Most people just sat out if they didn't support Trump or were still conservative. But his base is so big that it didn't matter. And it's just, I don't know. I feel like it was pretty obvious. But to just blame it on racism and misogyny is lazy. And if you do that, you're going to lose again. You're simply going to lose again. Of course, there is a sliver of people that will say, I will never vote for a woman. But for the most part, the people that are on the left that didn't vote for Harris had nothing to do with her being a woman. I think that was a pretty negligible effect on her results. But anything from her being a woman to only 80% of black men voted for her, that wasn't enough, to it's the Latinos' fault, like every excuse under the sun. Every excuse under the sun. I don't know. People care about policy. Did you see what happened in the majority Muslim areas? Dearborn, Michigan. Got smoked. Absolutely got smoked. I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with Israel, you think? People care about what they're seeing. People care about narratives. The GOP has a great narrative. Even if I absolutely disagree with it, their narrative is these people are ruining your country. Whether it's the Democrats' fault or not, it's hard to buy food. It's hard to afford rent. It's hard to get a car. It's hard to get a mortgage. So the GOP can say, these people are ruining your country. And what's your rebuttal to that? Well, if you look at the percentage of inflation, that people can't see that shit. You might say inflation's down. Why are eggs still unaffordable? Why is a one bedroom still $1,700? So you might say Well, according to this graph, inflation's actually where it was a few years ago. Reality is still things are more expensive than they were a few years ago. And guess what? The voters vote on based on what they are seeing, not based on some fucking graphs. But no one thought about that. They thought they could just say, well, inflation is down to 3.4%, which is almost at Trump presidency level. Meanwhile, eggs cost 6 times as much as they did when Trump was president. People are going to be like, no, inflation's not down. Now, if you do research for yourself or whatever, you might say, actually, it's corporate greed, not inflation. But the average consumer doesn't know. And you are talking about winning an election in a country, so you got to play to the average person. Instead, you're going for these niche groups. You're trying to get people to come to your side instead of just taking care of the things that your side believes in. The GOP ran on the economy being bad. Whether it's true or not, it looks like it's true. Feels like it's true because things are hard to afford. They're telling people that bad people are coming from south of the border and taking over their country. And you know what? Immigration has been a hot issue for a long time. And whether Biden turned back more immigrants than anybody, it wasn't championed. So, of course, the other side's going to say they're doing nothing about immigration. We're going to take care of it. The reason that you can't find a job is because these other people are taking your jobs. Now, we know in reality that's not true. But if you can convince someone that's down bad that someone else is the reason they're down bad, they're going to believe in you. They're going to trust that. They took advantage of things that they knew their followers believed in. And what did that do? Make their followers passionate. Make their followers trust them. I mean, damn, people are walking around making Make America Great Again stuff like it's Nike. The following is strong. It's very strong. So just saying vote for us because we're not him is not enough. Policy matters. People care. And not policy that people don't understand, just things that people understand. You can't say we're going to build back better. When I'm president, these are going to be the things that happen. I can't wait to deliver. When you're actively sitting in power and none of these things are happening. People need something. The hope and promise that you ran on in 2020, when a lot of those things never happened, when you said this was going to happen for student loans and then didn't let it happen, didn't fight hard enough for it to happen. Like, people just are going to eventually stop believing in you. I don't necessarily think Trump became more popular. I think people believed in the Democrats less than ever. And that allowed Trump's influence in politics to spread because the people that believed in him still believe in him. But the people that believe in Democrats are starting to dwindle. So please stop saying it's just misogyny. Stop saying it's just racism. And actually start to critically think about the failures of the party. Now, with that being said, I still don't think that it's reasonable that you can look past all those things and say that Trump should be the leader of the country. But again, I'm not a conservative-minded person, so that's why I feel that way. And I'd love to talk to people that do, have a nice, healthy debate about why they feel that way, but that's for another time. Now on to the voters, the constituents of the Democratic Party. The first thing that happened when they lost was people saying, oh, this has to be fraud. This can't be real. This is foul play. And for the most part, that's a bunch of bullshit. But I will say the bomb threats from Russia and heavily democratic cities is sketchy. It's very sketchy. especially when the person that won has, the history of colluding with Russia. But I'm not going to say that's what happened, but it's not unreasonable to automatically jump to that equation. But the people saying 20 million votes are gone, I don't think 20 million votes were stolen or lost. I think they were lost because 20 million people said, actually, no. I'm taking my vote somewhere else or I'm staying my ass at home. I think that's where 20 million votes went. Trump obviously didn't flip those people. Democrats just lost people. To the actual voters, the biggest demographic that failed were white women from the left's perspective. You hear all this talk about men doing this, men doing that, but the most important thing that was campaigned on was women's reproductive health. So the biggest demographic that voted were white women, and over half of white women voted for Donald Trump. There's your election right there. And you have an army of women that are chronically online saying, well, what we're going to do is we're going to stop dating men. We're going to stop buying products from companies that are owned by men. We're going to do this and that. You're going to do a bunch of stuff, but actually hold the people accountable. All right. What are you going to stop buying stuff for 2 days? What makes this any different than that stupid ass black square trend that happened on Instagram? When are you going to hold your family accountable? When are you going to actually challenge and do something about your dad's views, your mom's views, your brother's views, grandpa's views, etc.? Instead, you do a private post on your Instagram story. You text a bunch of friends that are already like-minded instead of challenging the people, letting them know that you truly believe that they're fucked up. Because right now, all your dad thinks is, oh, she's just going to be mad for a couple days, but by Thanksgiving, everything will be fine. We'll be a family again. It's just a phase. And for the most part, y'all be doing that. There's a damn TikTok trend of women saying, going to the poll to cancel out my husband's vote. Well, if this other side is as vile as you think it is, why are you married to someone that supports it? It doesn't make sense. It obviously shows that this is a game to you. It doesn't matter as much as you say it matters, which is the definition of having privilege, because this is a game to you. It doesn't actually matter. You say these things and you believe them for a moment, but then you let it all go. You get upset the night you lost an election, or the person you support lost an election, and then it's business as usual. It's fake. It's all fake. And of course, this doesn't apply to all of you, but damn, this applies to a big portion of you. It applies to a huge portion of you. When are you going to actually take action? And for all of you that do, it's appreciated. But individual action isn't enough. You need to be vigilant. You need to hold your family accountable. They need to know. Of course, if you believe that what they support is as bad as you say it is, they need to know. But I don't know. I don't think people are willing to be uncomfortable. I think you'd rather have a nice, peaceful Thanksgiving and talk about how you can't believe your daughter's going to grow up in a world where women don't have access to reproductive health, where people are getting deported en masse, where you can be sexist and racist and possibly whatever is that exists and be the leader of the free world. You're going to say all those things, but then you're going to do nothing to try to make the world the place you want it to be other than lead a tweet campaign or something. It's just it's just something. It's something. It's sad. That's what it is. You need to be better. You got to be serious. Either get along or get out the way. And to some of y'all's credit, apparently a bunch of you got out the way. You were down for the cause, but then you chose that, upholding the status quo, upholding the patriarchy, or however, whatever words you want to use, upholding white supremacy was more important than fighting for the rights of others, the freedom of others. Because as long as the majority group has all the freedom that they want, then you'll still be okay. You can still get access to all the things that apparently all the other people are going to lose because you're just in a privileged enough situation to get those things. Let's be real. If Donald Trump gets someone pregnant that he shouldn't have a child with, do you think that child's coming out? Exactly. Exactly. We will never hear about it because it won't exist. But yeah, I don't know. It's, of course, it's disappointing. It's disappointing that, you know what, almost more so than the election results, because I saw that coming for a couple years. You can't have a president that can't give a complete sentence, that falls simply from walking upstairs. You can't have someone like that and trot them onto a debate stage where they just can't talk and then last minute pull the rug from under them. Joe Biden was supposed to be a one-term president and then decided he wasn't going to be a one-term president. So it's already going on against your word. So people are already like, you said you were going to do this once to beat Trump and then the party would move forward. And then you decided to run again and then looked terrible. So then what do? You wait way too long and then just anoint Harris as the presidential nominee without letting the people decide. People didn't like that. Of course, Harris on paper has an immaculate resume. She's incredibly educated. She's smart. She came in 4th or 5th in the primaries in 2020. People just aren't a fan. They're not a fan. And I think it was a miscalculation thinking that moving more right would capture more votes, because it didn't capture any and lost you a bunch. So where do you go from here? Where does the party go from here? Because MAGA's not going away. They are not going away. And the effects will be felt for decades, because there are people that are, and I'm not talking about senators and stuff like that. There are judges. There are people placed in all different spots that will carry on the ideology for years. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It just is. It's the reality. So if you think that that's taking the country in the wrong direction, what are you doing to combat it? Because one thing about the GOP and their followers is if they feel like something's changing, enough of them are willing to do something about it. Shit, they couldn't even lose an election without trying to take over the Capitol to stop the certification of the election. As stupid as that was, shit, they were trying to do something. They're passionate. Where's the passion for the Democrats? All you get are tears and then finger pointing. That ain't going to cut it. You need people to rally behind you. Obama's not walking through those doors. He's the last person that people truly believed in. And they ran a campaign that made people believe. And honestly, it might not even have been his campaign. It might have just been him. He might have just been that charismatic, that good of a speaker, where people just, he talked and you felt like you would run through a wall for him. Shit, even people that don't like Obama at all from the GOP side will say, man, that guy can talk his ass off. Man, he can give a speech. Shit, he gave a commencement at a South Dakota school, and that state hates him just because he's that good at talking. He won Florida. Like, but it's time to move on. The only reason Biden probably won is because he was his vice president. But it's time to move on. Of course, you can always shoot for him and Michelle's endorsement because they're incredibly popular and will be until the days they die. But you got to get out of their shadow. You need someone new that the party can believe in and rally around. Because to the GOP's credit, they don't trust politicians. So what do? They grab someone from the outside, and man, did they grab someone from the outside. And now he's not an outsider anymore. He's a two-time president. Of course, you got to hope for the best and hope that he does a great job. But tariffs and shit like that sounds pretty dumb. We'll see what actually happens. But I'm hoping that there are enough people that at least understand economy in place that they won't let him completely destroy everything. But as we know, Trump has an ego, and he might only put yes men in there. Yes men and yes women. So we'll see. We'll see. One of the biggest strengths a person can have is knowing that they don't know it all. And to put people in place that might know something better than you do. But I don't think that is a trait that man has. He knows more about everything than anybody. But you know what? We'll get some funny quotes out of it. But yeah. He won. But yeah, he won. And part of it could have been because Joe Biden effed the party over, and whether it was intentional or not, that happened. So please, the party needs to take accountability. Stop blaming the voters. Stop blaming the people. If you gave them something to believe in, they would have showed up. Stop blaming progressive politics. Stop blaming lack of podcasts. Stop saying Democrats need a Joe Rogan. You know who used to be the left's Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan. But as the left started to go more right, so did he, and he went way further right. But he's on record for talking about how he supports a bunch of left ideas. But you know what? You know who didn't support left ideas? The party that's supposed to be the left party. And he's the single most famous podcaster in the world. Or I should say has the biggest podcast in the world. And you know what? That probably did shift a bunch of young men over because he's incredibly popular with young men. And somehow you thought that trying to get more moderate Republicans was going to be the change that you needed. I don't know. But one thing I do have to say for the people in the GOP, to constantly say that Trump winning isn't a win for racist people, isn't a win for this, at some point you got to realize that you are on the same side as people that are literal Nazis, the literal Ku Klux Klan. I'm not saying Trump's a Nazi. I'm not saying he's a Klansman. But those groups do support and believe in this candidate. And I'm just saying, you gotta eventually be like, if I'm in a room with these people, there's gotta be something off. And I'm not saying you can't support them, but you gotta stop denying the obvious. All right. If you support someone that those people also support, then they might be flawed. Can you at least start there? He's not perfect. All right. The fangirling is a little too much. It's a little too much. You should never go that hard for a politician. No one should ever worship any politician. And he's borderline worshipped. But if you can run on a platform that white people are in 30 years going to be a minority and that's scary, then that's also admitting that maybe minorities are at a disadvantage. Because why would being a minority be scary if there was nothing that was wrong with being a minority? I don't know. Makes you think, right? So, yeah. Of course, you can get cheaper eggs and all that stuff. That's what you say you voted for because Trump's going to deliver. But with him, you also get upholding of white supremacist culture. It's just the reality. And white supremacist culture doesn't mean that you yourself are a white supremacist, but it's a culture. It's making sure that the dominant people, which are white people, remain the dominant people. Doesn't mean that there are going to be no black people in power or nothing like that, because you don't have to be white to believe in white supremacy. It just simply means that you think that you think of being American as being white, and that should be the dominant figure in the country. Doesn't mean that you call black people the N-word and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be that extreme. But simply being afraid that white people are going to be a minority is white supremacist thinking. Because you're actually admitting that life is worse as a minority. And then if you critically think, you can say, why? Why is life worse as a minority? And then all of a sudden, light bulb goes off. There you go. You unlock something. I would be glad to hold your hand to that realization. But yeah, I don't know. Picking Trump for the economy is it's funny because he inherited Obama's economy. He didn't build his own economy. And then the pandemic destroyed his economy at the end. And then Joe Biden inherited the bad pandemic economy. So, I don't know. If you don't think he inherited a good economy, I don't know where you were. You're living in denial, or you're like 10 years old. The whole world's economy crashed. Now, I think Donald Trump has this plan to not be so reliant on the world economy, where America doesn't need to be a part of the world economy and can be more self-sufficient. Will that actually work in 2024? I'm not sure. I highly doubt it. But I'm not an economist, so I won't pretend like I know the answers for that. So we can talk about all these empty promises and things that I don't think he would deliver on, but one thing that they did deliver on is making sure people felt heard, felt seen. They played to their average voter, and then they started pulling their average voter more and more to the right. Instead, what the Democrats do is they push their average voter away. I'm all about inclusive ideas and inclusive planning, but not at the expense of making people that are, I guess, your normal population, the average person, not feel like they're a part of anything. Because unfortunately, people have egos, they have feelings, and it's going to push them away. It's going to make people feel isolated. Of course, women deserve opportunity, but you can't just try to forcefully make up for all the years there weren't opportunity in one administration. You can't just have no straight men a part of anything, because egos are fragile. They're going to pout and they're going to feel ostracized, and then they might even turn on you. You got to be smart about these things. You can't fix hundreds of years of oppression with some photo ops. You do a bunch of stuff like, I don't know, what did you deliver on? For example, when the new civil rights movement started, what did you do? What did you deliver on? When there were racial protests going on all across the country, what did you deliver on? Nothing. Nothing happened. And then you have the Black and South Asian presidential candidate that openly campaigns for things that people on the right want to hear. Well, what's the point of voting for you then? Because you don't have mean tweets? Like, what's the point of voting for you then? You're not giving people something to believe in. You're not giving people change that they can believe in. You had 4 years to do something that people could feel and see, and you didn't provide it. And you know what? You got to learn from it. You got to learn from the loss instead of blaming it on everybody else. But for you, Mr. President, President-elect, Mr. President Donald Trump, you did just mess up history for Grover Cleveland. His only claim to fame was being a 2-term president that didn't serve those terms consecutively. So congrats. You continue to etch yourself into history. You're just an unstoppable force at this point. And hats off to you. Because 12 and a half years ago when you threw your hat in that race and people were like, what is this reality TV show guy doing? Man, were we wrong. Honestly, I think at that White House Correspondents' Dinner, if Obama would have never roasted you, maybe you wouldn't have come to this. This might just be the biggest revenge tour of all time. But here we are. Here we are. All we can hope that is in 2028 or even 2026 midterms, no more lazy campaigns. No more running to just say, I'm not Donald Trump. Shit, in 2028, knowing Trump, we might somehow be running against Donald Trump again. He's going to say, actually, there should be a term on Congress, but there should be no term limit on presidents, and then run for president again. And then the Democrats are going to dust off Obama's sneakers, and he's going to jump back into the race. But you know what? This is something that you would think would be satire, me saying that sarcastically, but there's like 10% of me that thinks that that's actually possible. Because, I mean, look where we're at now. Anyways, I'm done complaining. I just had to get that off my chest. So, probably made a bunch of you sick sitting here listening to me trash you, but I just had to get that off my chest. Anyways, we'll get back to some happier stuff, some more interesting thing. Hopefully, the politic talk will be to a limited extent and not be an entire episode in the future. But as usual, appreciate you for taking the time of listening. And of course, subscribe, like, follow Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find me there. All right. Y'all have a good weekend. Stay safe out there. And Remember, everything will get better, but you have to make it better. You can't just rely on other people to do it for you. All right. Peace.